Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to those all around the planet. Welcome to Project Manufacturing and how acuMatica has a great solution for all those that are involved in such an endeavor. So, real quickly, want to welcome you all, and we'll cover an agenda real quick, and then we'll dive right into the information. So, we're going to cover really three things at a high level. One of those is going to be who needs project manufacturing, and then what are the challenges? Why do we need something special for project manufacturing? And then how does acuMatica help? So that's what we're going to cover today. And feel free to ask questions in the Q&A, and I'll take a look at that in between sections as we go along in hopes that we can get all the questions answered in time. But first, a word from our sponsor. I want to give a big shout out and a big thank you to our session sponsor, eBizCharge. They are an acuCONNECT sponsor and an acuMatica Platinum partner. So eBizCharge is an acuMatica certified payment solution that offers companies better ways to accept payments. They have on-site developers, they're privately owned, and they are 100% focused on making the best payment solution for their customers. Their solutions allow you to accept credit cards, debit cards, and e-checks all within acuMatica, to send an email payment link and allow customers also to pay through a customized payment portal or pay through the acuMatica customer portal, and so much more. So you can learn more at ebizcharge.com. That's EBIZ charge.com. Now back to the show. So who needs project manufacturing? Project manufacturing is a lot like kombucha. It's not for everyone. So who needs it? So the first group that I would say can you benefit from project manufacturing in acuMatica is what I call big iron. So these are the kind of equipment that would send Tim the Toolman Taylor into a real grunt fit. So these are large industrial equipment. Generally, they're going to have some heavy design work in them. They're going to have a lengthier production cycle, a higher dollar value, typically. And there's a good possibility that after the sale is complete, that there's going to be installation, customer service training, and possibly warranty work down the road. So big iron would be the first part. The second group would be those items with phased installation. Okay, so again, extensive design work. And these are typically produced and delivered to the customer in phases. So if you think of warehouse conveyor system, as the warehouse construction progresses, different components, different parts of the conveyor system would be delivered and installed in order to not get in the way of the rest of the construction. Okay, and this often leads to the need for incremental billing. The third, and this is an opportunity for that acuMatica has really built a great tool set for, these are manufacturing of construction components. So if you think about a building, maybe an apartment complex, commercial office building, and you'll have the stairs, maybe you'll have fences. For apartments, you've got the kitchen cabinets. So these are generally unique for the order. You may have multiple instances of the same item also being delivered as part of the project. And because of the multiple instances of this, you're typically looking at the project profitability instead of individual production efficiency. So one production order to build 10 kitchen cabinets out of an apartment complex that has 1,000 units. Now, one production order isn't going to make or break. You still have that production capability to analyze, but that's not really what the goal is. The goal is project profitability. And one of the things that acuMatica has built into the system with their combination of manufacturing and the construction edition is the construction substantiated billing, the statement of values then that is required on these construction type projects. So other than being bigger, more expensive, what makes a project manufacturing challenge? So why do we need a special solution for it? Well, first of all, there's a greater need for communication internally. So we'll start out with, as we think of the cycle, sales gets involved. And sales, they need to talk to engineering. And then once the sales process, and we've got some engineering drawings going on, it becomes a deal. Now we have a project manager involved. So the project manager starts communicating with engineering about the requirements, and then they bring in scheduling. And scheduling starts talking to purchasing about maybe some long-term special inventory items, some long lead time items. And then purchasing is talking with production. And then there starts to be all kinds of feedback between production and scheduling and purchasing. And now we have customer service involved, because maybe now we're ready to start coordinating things with the customers, keeping track of the communication that we have with the customer, and how do we keep all of the parties internally informed, because now we've got communication with the project manager, and of course here comes accounting. They have to understand what's going on when it comes to the financial part of it. So this is where tracking progress milestones for progress billing, incremental billing is important. And then we have warranty and field service to install and follow up and service the customer. And so this greater need for communication internally gives us the need for a single solution. But it's not just internally that we need to worry about. There are more external stakeholders typically when we start talking about project manufacturing as well. And those external stakeholders, they can be at the customer. So you still have purchasing, but you also probably have a project manager, maybe some engineering. And then what about the operations staff? Okay, the people that are actually going to be using and operating the equipment, the conveyor belt, whatever it might be, once it's finally delivered and installed. Maybe there's some training involved. And then also outside the customer, you've got some external stakeholders, architects and engineers. So if you're putting in, moving your equipment into a construction zone, and you've got to have the design, you've got to have sufficient flooring, support in the concrete underneath the machine to keep it from, vibrating, cracking the concrete. Maybe you've got compliance and regulators. If you're putting in a compressor, natural gas compressor in an oil field, you've got to worry about the EPA and such. There's also additional contractors. You've got, your electricians and your GCs on a construction site where you're putting this in. And then don't forget, if you're installing this, depending on what part of the country that you're in, you may have to worry about working with local unions. You may have to worry about getting special permits. So if you're working inside of a tank and you need closed area permitting and licensing, what about subcontractors and rentals? So if you're not going to haul your big equipment across the country to install something, you rent it locally. Maybe you're going to contract out some of the installation to a local firm. So now you've got a lot of stakeholders involved, not only internally, but also externally. And another thing that makes project-based manufacturing a challenge is there are more data inputs. You're just tracking more data. You've got the design data. You've got your budgeting and your phasing, so that when do you expect your revenue in? What do you expect your costs for each of the phases of the project to be? And what are those cost components? Are you going to have project-specific purchasing? And so you need to track project-specific inventory. And then, of course, maybe the customer completes change orders, trying to make up their mind. And, in order to expedite things, you're starting production, but then you have change orders as the customer gets new specifications and requirements. And then you've also got the milestones that are important for the accounting department to bill from, and revenue recognition based on the milestones as well. And then you've got more complex reporting requirements. Profitability, not just on the project itself, but what about each phase of the project, including the change orders that we talked about a little bit ago. You've got to come up with substantiated billing instead of just pulling numbers out of the air. You've got to be able to provide the backup for why you're billing. And again, we talk about the revenue recognition. And when you put all this together, one of the things that we end up with is the battle of the Excel spreadsheets. So if you think, common occurrence among businesses is that, the project manager will have their spreadsheet. Accounting will have their project-specific spreadsheet. Purchasing, because they're going to be planning on what to buy, they're going to have their spreadsheet, and they're all different. They're all incomplete silos of information. And so now you have a real problem, because do you have a real accurate picture of where the project stands? So how does acuMatica help? So acuMatica is going to take all of these different inputs, put them into a single point of inquiry, single source of truth. So where can you find everything related to the Tompkins project? In acuMatica, instead of combining the detail from 6 different spreadsheets, you can have a single source of truth. So let's take a look at that. So in acuMatica, the project is the backbone. So you create a project for each of these events, if you will, that you're wanting to manage. And so I was talking with someone earlier, and they said, wow, there's a lot of information on the project tab. And I said, well, there's probably one tab for every spreadsheet that you're managing. And so what's inside the project? What are some of the things that acuMatica includes in this project to help manage this entire process? So first of all, you've got the controls. You've got the framework that you're working within. So within each of the projects, there are tasks. Okay? And so this can be equated to a phase of design and drafting. And then once that's complete, then we have our production. And then maybe the next phase is installation. And the next phase is training. And so all of these become tasks inside the project. It also includes budgets. So you can have cost and revenue budgets, not only for the entire project, but broken down by task. This assists in the billing. This assists in the project management to make sure that you're conducting your operations efficiently and profitably for the project. And inside of acuMatica, one of the things that you are able to do, should you wish, is you can actually budget to the cost code level or the cost component level on each of the tasks as well. And then you've got the billing and revenue recognition rules to translate this into the financial statements. So you've got the control and the framework, but then also you've got the history of and visibility to all the transactions. So purchase orders, project-specific inventory, production orders that are associated with the project, customer change orders, invoices, activities. So maybe it's a time activity to where you're not producing yet and you're having the draftsman or the engineer record their time against the project. Maybe you're not going to bill it, but you want to understand as you're bringing this project in what your costs are that are associated with that. And you can do this through time activities. Now, once the project is set up, so you've got all of your framework, you've got all of your budget set up. Now you can start recording transactions against it. Because in acuMatica, you have use of the project everywhere. So you'll notice here on the sales order in the upper left, we have the ability to create a sales order and link it to a project and then link individual lines to different project tasks. And the same thing with the purchase orders. So now you're starting to accumulate those costs and your cost commitments for the project based upon actual transactions. So you don't have to enter the PO and then go to a spreadsheet and write down that you created that PO against the project to record the costs. You've got production information. So now you can start to record production activity and record all of that activity, the costs, the labor, the overhead against the project. And because we have dates involved, okay, so we have tasks that have due dates and we have production that have due dates. Now you can start to manage that schedule. So you've got your project flowing in, all your project information flowing into the project and dates being coordinated, because you're hiring the technology to keep track of these things instead of manual input for all of these. So continuing on, again, accounts payable and general ledger, you can do transactions for allocations to the projects. And this is where we talked about tasks, time activities. Maybe it's billable, maybe it's not billable. But you're able to use this in order to capture all of the costs and activities for the project. So now you can see where we're funneling all of these transactions into a single system because it's all stored in the project. So here we recorded a labor transaction, so it shows on our balances tab inside the project that we have actually, completed 240 hours of the project. Here's our actual amount, 240. And if you want to view the transaction, you click the view transactions, and now you have another window show up that gives you the detail of all of those transactions inside the labor budget line. So now think of this as in an Excel spreadsheet. You'd have record. Now where would you go? How would you find out the detail? Chasing yourself around the room, trying to find the detail. With acuMatica, again, we're giving you actionable information inside a single source of truth because you're assigning all of these activities to the project. And what you end up with is data you can use. Data that you can use to make decisions. Excuse me. And this may be data that you use on a regular basis, a daily basis, say in a dashboard, to notify you of those exceptions or the things that need your attention. Or maybe you put them into a report where you're meeting with a team, or you're analyzing groups of projects together, or an individual project. But you now have data that you can use, and the system has gathered this information for you. And so if you're dealing with large, complex manufacturing projects and you're using spreadsheets, there's a better way. So I appreciate all of you. Let me get back here to, we'll stop sharing. And we'll take a look here to see if there are any questions in the Q&A. Okay, no questions yet, but I bet someone has one. So shout out to the first person that asked a question. If there are no questions, that generally means one of two things. Most likely is you're all asleep and you missed the opportunity to ask one. Or possibly, I did such a great job that there are no questions. So I'm looking in the chat. Thanks, Johnny, for the nice comment. Looking in the Q&A. I'm done a little bit early. I thought maybe we'd have some more discussion here, but not seeing it. So we'll give it a couple more minutes here. I'll go ahead and stay on. In case someone comes up with questions, you guys can enter it. But I do appreciate you joining me today. Again, I want to emphasize to you that if you're using spreadsheets, there's a better way. Hire the technology. Let the technology do the work so that you can be as profitable and successful as you want to be. So thanks all for coming. I'll give you back a couple minutes, or stay on and let's chat. Now, instead of typing this into the chat, I'll just go ahead and answer it. So that's more efficient. I don't know what I was thinking. I guess because you typed. Yeah, you need to have a partner that understands business processes and the entire business itself. And so having a partner that's willing to dive in and really have that relationship with you to understand your requirements in order to tie your requirements into the Acumatica functionality. And that is, with the billing rules, what do you have for revenue recognition? Are you allocating and reserving inventory to the job, or are you needing to just purchase directly to the job and not put it in inventory at all? Another thing is understanding how Acumatica works with manufacturing, because one of the things with manufacturing is that if you're recording labor against a job, it's going to absorb and do a debit to your WIP inventory and a credit to a labor absorption account. So now we're getting boring here, but that doesn't record any expenses against the job. So how do we manage the Acumatica system in order to do that? So the partner needs to know manufacturing. The partner also needs to know business process and understand the relationship between all those. So hope that helps. Any other questions, folks? Frank, good to see you. Donnie, thanks for stopping in. Marisol, appreciate your time. David, thanks for coming by. Appreciate it.